We're talking with USC all-time great Anthony Davis on a bonus edition of the Past Our Prime podcast. And Anthony, you've got a big event coming up this weekend in Newport Beach. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, the event coming up is basically going to be a talk about my beginnings with Nike and how I developed, how I started wearing the shoe. The gentleman who developed the shoe and got me to wear the shoe, his name is Nelson Ferris. We'll be there speaking about our past and how the shoe was developed.
Yeah, it's called The Rise of Anthony Davis and Nike, an in-person chat with USC legend Anthony Davis and Nike innovator Nelson Ferris this Saturday at 3:30 at the Pacific Club in Newport Beach. For more information, please call 949-955-1123. That's 949-955-1123. Now, Anthony, not to give it away, but well, maybe to give it away a little bit, tell us a little bit about how you got involved with this little-known shoe company that nobody had heard of back then called, I think it was called Nike, right?
Basically, the company was called Blue Ribbon Sports at first. And we were 1972. We were playing Oregon up in Oregon. It was a cold, rainy day. And this guy approached us and said, we got these shoes we're trying to develop, and we're a running shoe. And I said, well, okay. So he says, well, here's some pair of shoes you guys can try on. So Lynn Swan, Sam Cunningham, and myself, we tried these shoes on, had little waffle bottoms, and I liked them and felt great on the turf, but for some reason we kept running out of the shoe. And so Coach McKay saw that happen. He said, you take those blankety blank shoes, and I don't want to see him out here. So we had to go back to our Rydell shoes, which I had to put on. And basically, I had a great game. I was not the starter. I was a third string tailback on that team. And what happened was Alan Carter and Rob McNeil went down. And so here's his reign. And John Robinson was assistant at the time. He says, Anthony, you got to go. And in my little Rydell shoes, I went on the field, and the first play they called, I think the play was called 48 toss. And I said to Mike, I said, that's a terrible thing to call. I'm off the bench, I'm cold, I'll blow my legs out. He says, we're running this play. And then first thing, he yelled out the signals, pitched me the ball, and 48 yards later, I was in the end zone. But back to the Nike, and didn't see anything about the Nike deal. Didn't see anything, and then they were pursuing me. And then through my junior year, couldn't wear them. Then my senior year, this gentleman by the name of Nelson Ferris in a raggedy BW van was coming around the school, and he says, you got to wear these shoes. I studied your running style, and you'll be great in these shoes. I just felt like, he said, well, I told you, Coach McKay said I cannot wear those shoes. That's it, period. But he was persistent, and I respected that. And I really was excited about, because I'm a young kid. Here's somebody developed a shoe around me and my running style. And the week of the UCLA game, it was a national TV game, and he was there. He says, look, you got to wear the shoe. And I said, listen, I'll go talk to Coach McKay and see if I can convince him. So I went upstairs in Heritage Hall, and his secretary's name was Bonnie. I said, Bonnie, is any way the coach is available to talk to me for a few minutes? And she said, let me see if he can see you, AD. So she walked out and she says, give him a couple of minutes. So I walked into his office. I said, Coach, you remember that time up in Oregon in 1972 when we kept running out of those shoes in pregame? You told me to stop. I couldn't wear them. He said, yeah, I don't want that crap out there. I didn't want any of that stuff. He says, well, the guy's back. It's a better shoe. And he says, AD, you can't wear these shoes. I said, but Coach, I made up some crazy stuff. I said, Coach, black people got bad feet.
Whatever it takes.
And I said, and I love to wear the shoes because it's a better shoe. And I don't think he was buying the story, but for all of a sudden he walked back and forth and he says, okay, you can wear the shoes, but they got to be black, because the shoes were white. Mm. Said he didn't believe in white shoes. He thought anybody wore white shoes were hot dogs. Who's that guy back there in New York named Joe Namath wearing these white shoes? And you can't do that. So I convinced him. I went downstairs and said, I said, Nelson, I can wear this shoe. He was so happy. He ran out, and the next day he came back. He had 2 pairs. He had painted them black, and he just left the swoosh white. And everybody always thought I was crazy and weird. What kind of shoes are those? And I said, well, these shoes are called, they're called Nikes. And I went out and practiced in them. The day of the game, it was a national TV game, USC, UCLA for the Pac-8 title at the time. And I remember the second quarter of that game, I broke O.J. Simpson's career rushing record in the shoe. Well, I went on rush for 195 yards that day and 3 touchdowns. We won the Pac-8 title. But the thing is, when I broke the record, that was big news to Nike. I mean, that because they're breaking through football. It was a track shoe, a running shoe. And now they were graduating into a football shoe. And I was one wearing the shoe. And there's been rumors and stories told about how Phil Knight, I don't know how true that is, or Bill Bowerman, that they took everybody out to McDonald's and they celebrated with with champagne and Big Macs.
Mm.
I don't know how true that is. That could be a myth or whatever, but the story sounded good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like, Anthony, you and Swanee and Sam Bam were too fast. You were running right out of those shoes.
I don't know what it was, but I mean, when we cut the corner, we make the cuts, and Lynn was coming out of his routes, or Sam, or whatever, and what I was doing, I was running out of the shoe more than they were. So, and they caught the eye of that, and they said, "No, that's not going to happen." They can imagine seeing me breaking down the field, and I'm running out of the shoe in the wet rain and that turf.
That UCLA game was a week before the Notre Dame game, correct? So,
Yeah.
So your first 2 games in those Nike shoes are like unbelievable.
Yet it was in the Notre Dame game, and as you guys know the story about Notre Dame, we're down 24-0, then 24-6 at halftime, and everybody that said, "Wow, we got to be respectful second half," because Notre Dame in those years was in the top 5 offensively and offensively and defensively. And then I remember after, the halftime, and McKay brought us all back to the middle in the Coliseum, and I remember McKay saying, "Gentlemen, in 1964, we're down to Notre Dame 17-3, if I'm correct." He said, "They can come back and win, we can come back and win." And they won 20-17. And simultaneously, we all looked at each other in the locker room and said, "This man must have lost his mind." We're coming back on this team, 24-6, and where they were ranking in the country. And so he says, all of a sudden, he was walking back and forth. He says, "Somebody in here has to make something happen." And all of a sudden, he said, "They're going to kick the ball to AD. He's going to bring it all the way back." I said, I said, "He's really lost it. There's no way that's going to happen." There's no way that's going to happen. So when I walked to the field and I saw the guys a little down a little bit, I said, "Listen, if we're going to lose this game today, well, let's go down and be respectable and make it a game." And I said, "All I want you guys to do is just get 1 block, and I'm going to try to get great field position, or I'm going to bring this so-and-so all the way back." And I said so-and-so. And as it is, you can see, we scored 49 points in 17 football minutes. I've never been a part of anything like that, collegiately or professionally, period. And I've never seen anything like that since. And in my opinion, that's the greatest game in school history, which I played in the greatest time in the school's history.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget those moments and those ball players and my teammates.
Yeah, Anthony, I was reading about that 17 minutes, and it almost reads as fictional. Like you can't score 49 points in 17 minutes. I believe you scored 26 of them. It's comical almost.
Yeah, I mean, that's comical, outer space, video game type of thing. I mean, how can you score that like that on a team like that? I mean, and I reminisce on some of that stuff, and I try to talk to people, and it says, "Anthony, you should have had an out-of-body experience sitting in the stadium watching it." But see, that's never going to happen. It never will happen. It just said, because when people saw, when they were experiencing that, they said, they're on another planet. Those are two separate games. Two separate games. The first half was one, the second half was another. I mean, when it scored 49 points like that, was unbelievable.
And was there a point in that game where you noticed that Notre Dame knew they were in trouble?
You know, I really don't. I think the kick return just took a lot of wind out of their sails. I mean, some things in a football game or in a situation, you can change the momentum, and that changed the momentum when they saw something like that. If they go from 24-0 to 55-24 and then open it up with a 102-yard kick return, I mean, that just takes it out of you. And here it comes. And then the next time when we kicked off to them, Big David Lewis hit that guy. I don't know anybody remember that film, but he hit him and the whole stadium just roared. That's how much of a devastating hit that he had on that guy. And then from that point on, we just steamrolled him. Steamrolled him.
I remember watching that game on television. It was a Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend. And when it was 24, and the Notre Dame was kind of slowly building this 24-point lead. So you're like watching this game and you're feeling, I almost felt sorry for you guys. And then you score at the end of the half. I'm going, okay, maybe. And then the kickoff return, it's almost like you broke their spirit at some point there. And maybe it was the kickoff return.
Well, if that didn't break them, I mean, everything else did, because of a combination of everything. I mean, that was a start. I mean, because that was my second score before the half, and then in the beginning of the second half, and that had to break their spirit. I mean, I talked to the late Mike Fanning, we became teammates at the Rams, and when he saw me, he says, "God, I'm glad." I said, "We're on the same team now, Mike." And I asked him, I said, "What happened to you guys in the second half of that game in 1974?" He said, "You just took the wind out of our sails." I said, "Well, I'm glad it was your win, not mine." That would have cost us a national championship. Basically, that had been ended.
In those years, they voted for the Heisman prior to that USC Notre Dame game. Do you think you win that Heisman? I think you do. If they would have counted that game.
I'm gonna tell you, gentlemen, this, and I'm gonna tell most of you fans, the Trojan fans, and let me say this to you. In the combination of my career of rushing all-purpose yards, after that game, our kick return team set all the Pac-8 records and the NCAA record kickoff return. And after that game, I had my all-purpose yards were better than Griffin's. So they credit me for how they vote for the Heisman Trophy now.
Mm-hmm.
If they'd have waited till after that game, I believe I win that trophy.
Yeah,
I think so. No
Now,
question.
if you're not wearing the Nike shoes, do you think you still put up those numbers? Did the Nike shoes help you basically achieve that?
Well, the shoes felt great on me. I mean, I don't know if that would have happened, but I mean, since I had the shoes on, I'm gonna give them credit for it, because
that's the right answer, Anthony. That's the right answer.
But what made them feel different from like your normal shoes you were wearing? There's something you felt when you put them on that was different?
When I put them on, the way he developed that shoe, because the cleats went up around the side of my foot, they weren't really flat, but it was like there were spikes right around the edge of the shoe. And when I would cut precisely. I mean, when I planted, boom, I was right out of my cut, and they fit me like a glove. So when I laced them up, it was no give or take. It was just like a glove on my foot. And the construction of the shoe was just unbelievable. It was ahead of its time.
You win that game, Anthony, and you're on the cover of Sports Illustrated for the third time. What was that like back in the day when Sports Illustrated was the biggest thing in sports, and there you are on the cover of it?
Well, that was amazing. When that cover came out, it was a fold-out cover. I understand that Sports Illustrated, that's the only fold-out cover they've ever had. And I was a fold-out cover. And for me to be on there, that young guy with that Nike shoe on there, and that's another thing that really just catapulted Nike too, was that shoe. And that shoe was on the cover. And I remember talking to guys like Ronnie Lott, and years later, he says, "Man, when I was in junior high school, we were trying to get those shoes. We couldn't find them because there was no manufacturing. It was a handmade shoe. So the fact that me being the one with that shoe on the cover of Sports Illustrated, in those years, it was a worldwide cover. And so it wasn't like regional the way it is now, but it was worldwide everywhere. I don't know how many covers I've signed over the years. It's got to be in the thousands. I don't know. But I tell you, that's a famous cover, a great cover.
Anthony, you're a football player. You're known around campus. Everyone wants a piece of you. What was it about Nelson that made you go, yeah, I'm going to go with that guy? What was it? I know you guys are still good friends now.
Man, it was it was his persistence. It was his belief in me and the young company at the time that and they wanted me. And that was a great thing for me, because this picture, you got, in those years, you had Adidas, you had a Puma, and you had the upcoming shoe called Kangaroo, and Nike, and the fact that this one of the shoe companies, they were a small, inferior company, but the fact that Nike wanted me, I'm a poor kid out of Pacoima and whatever, that's it. And these guys really wanted to develop a shoe for me. That's what got me. I mean, because who's doing that in those years? Nobody won that.
And there was no doubt in your mind when you met him and he was talking to you. There was no like, here's another guy trying to want something. There was no doubt. You said, I knew it, which obviously shows the intelligence you have and had.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because look, Nelson was determined, and I like that determination. And I've known him for 50 years plus, and every time I see him or talk to him, it's just like, one day we won't be talking to each other, but so I cherish every moment I have with him. And I always go back to those years when he was trying to get me the word, and everybody's looking at me and him as weirdos. I said, but guess what? We've been together since, and we've been affiliated together for 50-something years, 50+ years. If you'd have told me 50 years ago that Nike shoe would be where they are today, I said, you need to give me something to smoke, because it wasn't going to happen.
Right.
I was just so intent on the fact that these people wanted me versus just, I'm another football player and you're going to put on this shoe and you're going to put on that shoe and that's it. The fact that I was the unique one that they wanted me to wear the shoe is what pushed me over.
AD, before there was, Michael Jordan, and you were sort of a pioneer because you were like one of the first to tie in this shoe merchandising with your playing career.
Well, here are three of the pioneers I'm going to give you of Nike. Of course, it was Steve Prefontaine, the Olympic miler.
Mm-hmm.
They already established as a running shoe. Then there's me in football. And then there's George Gervin, and then other people down the road like Bjorn Borg, the 5-time Wimbledon champion. So those were the four pioneers of Nike before Jordan. Jordan was 11 years old when I first put those shoes on. He was 11 years old. So, I mean, I don't know if Jordan knows of me or whatever, but they need to know their history, because when they were little boys, I was wearing the shoe. And those pioneers with those, and a lot of people really don't know the pioneers of Nike. I know they did a film they called Prefontaine, but I'm just a whole wrong picture of Nike. A lot of people, I don't think people really know that. They don't know that I wore a handmade shoe, hand painted with a marker, not paint, a marker. And the fact that I went out and made history in those shoes. And the shoe was part of the greatest game in SC's history.
Well, look, Anthony, I mean, we get paid to know this, the three of us, and I can't speak for Mark or Bill, but, I've watched you guys my whole life. I didn't know.
Yeah.
So
I had no idea.
Really is not only amazing to find this out, but you really were. I mean, you took a chance. It's not like it was a September game against, no disrespect, I won't even name a team, but you're talking about putting these shoes on against UCLA and Notre Dame when it mattered the most. And then the Rose Bowl, I assume, after that. So it was unbelievable timing on your part.
Well, here's the thing, and everybody knows that everything in life is timing, right place, right time, whatever. I happen to be in the 74 year, wearing Nike, 3 great games, UCLA, Notre Dame, the 1970 Rose Bowl. I'm wearing those shoes in those 3 games. And then we on to win the national title that with a national title year in those shoes. I set all the record in those shoes. And that's what people really don't know and understand about those the last 3 games of that year and that season. The fact that we did what we did it's unbelievable. And I'll challenge any SC person, anybody want to talk about the teams of now and the teams of the past. I'm just going to be very biased. I'm going to say it now. People who knew back in that period of time, that was the greatest period in school history. And what a lot of people don't know, and I'll challenge anybody too, the 70 decade, which I played in, is the greatest decade in SC history and the NCAA history because of all the national championship rings and runs in all the sports. And football anchored everything. A lot of people don't know John McKay was the head coach and the athletic director at the same time. So he had a hand on everything overall. And if you're looking down, you know I'm representing you well.
Very much so. Very much so. Anthony, let me ask you this. You have those couple games. Were you the only one wearing the shoes? Did you have any teammates that were like, hey, bud, hook me up?
No, I was the only one wearing them.
That's crazy.
Only one wearing them. And then I don't know if McKay would have let that. He let me do it because I guess he had faith in what was going on because I was adamant about the shoe because I liked the shoe. But it was even better when I got it. But the guys on the team thought it was sort of strange for me to wear that shoe. They weren't familiar with the shoe, and no one wore the shoe. I'm the only one who wore the shoe. And matter of fact, in the next level, in the professional ranks, I was the only one wearing the shoe then.
Wow.
So you won 5 championships at USC, 2 in football, 3 in baseball. And people don't realize what a good baseball player you were. Did you go to Coach Dado after the football season and say, hey, you got to let me use these Nikes for the baseball season too?
Well, here's the thing. My 74 year, I didn't play baseball in my 74 year. So technically, I'm probably the Nike's first 2-sport athlete. But it didn't happen because what happened, I was drafted in the World Football League. I had to leave school, and I couldn't, scholarship was avoided after that. So I had to make a choice. So I left school. So I didn't get to wear it for Dado. What I definitely would have, and Nelson would have developed something around that.
So you're like Bo Jackson, actually.
Yeah.
You were before Bo Jackson owes an allegiance to you because you were the first football baseball guy.
Well, yes. I mean, I was the first 2. I mean, what Dion and Bo did, I could have done. So I was a top pick out of high school by the Baltimore Orioles, and when I came to SC, my intentions was I knew I was going to be because I was a 3rd string guy, even though I was in high school All-American and all that. But my emphasis was baseball. And when I went to SC, I pretty much think I was just going to play baseball and eventually come on out and sign professionally in baseball. Matter of fact, Baltimore they wanted me out of high school right away. And then I remember having a discussion with the late Rod Dado, my coach, coached me in baseball and gave me a lot of advice. He goes, Tiger, he used that word a lot, Tiger. He says, Tiger, I don't care what you did in a football field, but you being a switch hitter in baseball and playing all outfield position and your anchor position be center field. He said, your career is in baseball. I don't care what you did in football, the career is in baseball. And you know something? And I started getting nicked up in the pros and everything else, and then had a terrible pro career based on a lot of different crazy things. That's another story one day. I'll never forget, I was sitting in the locker room at Tampa Bay, and I'd hurt my shoulder a little bit, and I can hear his voice. And I can hear the scout from the Baltimore says, you should have got to play baseball. and I realized I made a mistake then, but people don't realize that I played on 3 straight baseball teams, and I was on 3 of the 5 straight baseball teams at USC. That's never been done in history.
To win the College World Series?
Yeah.
1 in 3 years. I was part of the 70 to 74 5 straight national title teams. I was on 3 of the 5 straight.
And so when the Twins drafted you, was there ever a shot of thinking, I think I'm going to try the baseball thing?
You know, something I thought about it when I was 28 years old. I said, you know, so I'm gonna try to go back and play baseball and see if I can get a shot at the minor leagues. And I said, no, I just didn't have the desire to do it. But when the Twins had me, and I thought about that, and then it was a schoolmate of mine, it was a school friend of mine. His cousin grew up around the street when I was out of San Fernando. His name was Lyman Bostock. I'm sure you remember.
Yeah, sure do.
Yeah.
We would have been teammates if I'd have done all right and made it on up past AAA and stuff like that, but it didn't happen, And then, once when I ended up meeting Rod Carew down the road, I told him, he knew I was drafted by him. And I was looking forward to meeting all those guys, but it didn't happen. It wasn't in the cards, and I just moved on.
Mm-hmm. This Saturday, November 2nd at the Pacific Club in Newport Beach at 3:30, Anthony Davis and Nike innovator Nelson Ferris talk about how they helped launch a shoe that changed the sports world for forever. For more info, call the Pacific Club at 949-955-1123. Anthony, hope you have a great turnout for that. You like doing these kind of things?
Well, sure. I mean, you see how I'm running my mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, I could talk on forever. And by the way, I just tell people also on top of the phone number, they can go to adventures28.com. adventures28.com. And I'd love to see all the folks and trans fans come out and see me talking and give us some in-depth history. Well, because a lot of people don't really know. A lot of people don't really know I played baseball.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people don't know a lot of different things about that era.
Yeah. Yeah.
The 70 era, I'm going to say it again. The 70 era was the greatest era in school history and NC2A history. Any of you people, you naysayers or haters out there, if you want to challenge it, you can give me a call and I'll give you a rundown.
When you think of Tailback U, he's one of the names that just rolls right off the tongue. Anthony Davis, want to thank you so much for spending some time with us here today on the Past Art Prime podcast. We really enjoyed your time. Thank you.
And thank you. And all you Trojan fans, you come see me on the 2nd. You might be able to get a jersey.
Hey, Anthony, can I say one thing? I picked my daughter up from school, and there's a guy there. He's a longtime USC season ticket holder.
Yes.
Last week, we were talking about the team and the frustrating losses. He looked right at me and said, they need a guy like Anthony Davis on the field. So you're not forgotten, man. He said he had that excitement thing. Like, they got to get a guy like you. I'm going to tell Richard that I talked to you. He was so excited to say that.
Well, bless his heart and tell him to come on down to Pacific. Right. See me, and we might have something for him. We'll have something.
I'm going to pass that on to him.
Yeah, pass him on. Come on down.
I'm going to.
And I'll be glad to talk to him and sign him all.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you so much,
man.
Thank you, guys.
Well, there you have it. Anthony Davis, one of the all-time greats at USC. Great baseball player, great football player. He did it all.
He's one of the greatest running backs they've ever had. I mean, I know like they put the Heisman stuff. They ought to put some up of guys like him that maybe didn't win the Heisman, but were just as good as the guys that did. He was amazing.
Like they said, there's not too many guys. Jordan. They had Jordan rules. I didn't know they had Anthony Davis rules because you changed the Heisman Trophy thing, voting early for Archie Griffin. Archie Griffin's the only guy to ever win the Heisman twice. That may not have been the case had they not voted so early. We'll have more with Anthony when we release the December 9th, 2024 episode to coincide with Davis being on the cover of Sports Illustrated 50 years ago. That's next month, December 9th. Until then, for Mark Hoffman, for Bill Mahoney, and of course for SC's great Anthony Davis, I'm Scott Johnston, and we are Past Our Prime.